Well, there's been another twist in the curious case of the Epstein files. Now more than a dozen of them related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have disappeared from the Justice Department's public webpage, including a photograph showing U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, it comes less than a day after they were posted with no explanation from the Trump administration and no notice to the public. The U.S. Justice Department released thousands of records tied to Epstein's sex trafficking investigation Friday. And Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says several 100,000 more will be released in the coming weeks. Now, the release includes photographs, call logs, grand jury testimony, and documents. Among the photos, former President Bill Clinton in a hot tub, the late Michael Jackson and Diana Ross, and rocker Mick Jagger with Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Trump's name appears in a contact book, but it is not clear whose book that it is. Joining me now is Gloria Allred, a victim rights attorney who has represented around 27 survivors in the Jeffrey Epstein case. She's also represented some alleged victims of Ghislaine Maxwell. Gloria, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
When you saw this and the news came out yesterday, you saw some of these files disappear. I want to get your reaction to that initially and again, watching this happen without any explanation.
Well, I will say there's a lot of criticism, Matt, of over-redaction of the files. Yesterday morning, I was concerned with under-redaction of the files because some of the names of my victim survivor clients, which we had previously disclosed to the Department of Justice, requesting that they be redacted, which is consistent with what the law, the Transparency Act, requires, we're still there in the files to be read, to be seen, to be noticed by the press. We took quick action and immediately notified the Department of Justice, and they said they would turn it over to their team that does the redacting. But why it happened that way, I don't know. Now, as to the files, the missing files that were there and released on Friday, as you point out, and then suddenly yesterday went missing, I don't know. But this only feeds into conspiracy theories that, someone perhaps may be trying to engage in a cover-up. I don't know. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe it is a cover-up. But in the absence of information, that's when conspiracies grow. And there is an enormous interest in the court of public opinion among the public. They want transparency in the release of the Epstein files. That's why the administration ended up having to do what they resisted doing for so long, which was sign into law the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
Right. And so I'm curious too, because Gloria, we've talked about it and been following some of the coverage in how the process of how this is all unfolding. There is the political pressure side of this, but there has been criticism as well that the victims in particular are being ignored. They're not getting a heads up about what's coming up. You just talked about it yourself, the fact that some of their names were almost made public when that was, is going to be illegal and against the law. So give me a reaction about how that's affecting, how this whole process too, and these documents are affecting them.
Well, that's such an important question. Thank you for asking about the survivors, because they are the key to all of this, and they demonstrated enormous courage in speaking out to get these files released. Why did they want them released? The answer is they want truth, transparency, and any form of justice that is left to them. But the Department of Justice failed them in 2008 when the sweetheart deal was entered into. Instead of the 60 felonies in a charging indictment that the United States Attorney's Office could have filed, it was transferred to the state with only 1 or 2 charges filed against Jeffrey Epstein. And so that was a sweetheart deal, and they failed the victims. And also, again, in New York, when Jeffrey Epstein was in fact arrested and put into custody, the Metropolitan Detention Center, instead of being able to confront him at trial, as many victims wanted to do, their hopes were dashed when he either died by suicide or homicide in the custody of the federal government. Now they're relying on the federal government to protect them and their identities, but they're also wanting a full disclosure of the files. And now we're seeing very strange things happening. And we're also seeing, the president said he wanted the investigation of prominent Democrats. For the survivors, they're not interested in the politics of this. They want any third party man who might have been engaged in assisting, enabling, conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein to be held accountable. And so you clear the smoke out of all this and the political overlay. Is that going to happen? I don't know, because I don't know whether there is going to be sufficient evidence to hold third-party men accountable or not. But we have to try to see what the files will disclose.
Gloria Allred, an attorney who's represented dozens of Epstein victims, we really appreciate you taking some time for us today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.